Hello, everyone. I wanted to take some time today to talk about something that has been on my mind. It's an interesting topic, and I think I'll call it the imposter syndrome. And this is something that I'm personally familiar with and have certainly spent a lot of time in my life reflecting on and working with. And for me, I'll just kind of get into my story around it. And so I've been on this path of healing and also on the path of helping others for quite a long time. I would say that my healing path began around 1999. So it's around 23 years. And my path of helping others formally began in 2006. So we're looking at coming up on 17 years of being in the role of a coach and helping others, and that was certainly both in the workplace and where I worked, as well as working as a coach outside of my workplace. And at many points along that journey, either through life experience or conditioning, I really doubted my ability to help others. And one of the earlier stories that comes to mind, I had someone in my life who was quite adamant that the path to take was that of education. And by no means do I judge that I believe that education is a good path and can provide many things and concrete foundation. And however, that was not my path. And even though I knew that was not my path, that seed of I guess I'll just call it conditioning, really was in the back of my mind. And I think the story went something like, if I don't go to school, I won't amount to anything, was at least what I took from it. Whether that was actually what was said or not, I'm not 100% sure. But that was what I took from it. And so I always had this judgment in behind my actions of like, am I good enough? Is it okay for me to be doing what I'm doing without an education, even though my education was the school of life? And in all of the things I did, like I spent thousands of hours working with people. I spent 27 years working in restaurants, working with employees as a manager. What I learned about people in those experiences was more than I imagine you could learn from a textbook. And then later in life, I was working at an addiction center, and my colleague, who was a therapist, gave me some feedback based on a question that I asked her. I asked her about the efficacy of coaching versus, diving deeper into trauma. And I said, I don't believe that coaching really is helping fully because we're not really looking back at what happened to people. And without diving into that, her response was not to answer the question, but to simply say, Ross, it doesn't matter. You're not a coach, you're a therapist. And I'll never forget how confused I was by that statement, that I was a therapist, not a coach. And I remember responding and saying, well, I don't have training as a therapist. I have training as a coach. And she said, yeah, that's exactly what makes you a good therapist. Now, I'm not saying that I'm a therapist. That's a whole other conversation. But what I will say is that over time, I've spent a lot of time really connecting with what my truth is. And I've come to a place of realizing that, I have gifts to share that have come from different ways of learning. And those gifts are quite powerful and very helpful. And I really have stepped into those gifts and really been open to what I've learned and how I bring that to the work that I do. And since discovering human design, what I've learned is that that's my profile. In human design, we all have a profile. And my specific profile is that I have three distinct phases of learning in my life. And the third phase of that learning, or that profile, is to step into your wisdom and to share that wisdom with the world. And that's where I'm at. That third phase starts around the age of 50, and I'm 53. And I've definitely been stepping into this place of sharing my wisdom over the last few years. And the other aspect of my profile is being a natural at certain things. And I do believe that there's my way of seeing and my way of experiencing the world has brought me a gift, which brings this element of like it's just natural to me. So that brings me to this idea of, and continuing with this idea of being an imposter, or feeling like I'm that I'm a fraud, and how that carried through sort of in the background as a filter as I've been on my journey. And I suspect that many others have this as well. And I do believe that many of us are here to step into our gifts and to share our gifts with the world. And if there's that tremendous doubt that's in the way of sharing those gifts or fully stepping into that you have to share, that's problematic because it creates this double-sided energy, and we're all energetic beings and we can feel into each other. And if we're doubting ourselves and at the same time trying to step into our power, people are going to feel that. And that is something that we need to work through. We need to really truly believe in ourselves and accept ourselves if people are going to take us seriously. And I think and I feel in my heart that I've been doing a lot of work on that, and that there's been a shift in terms of how I feel about and how I allow doubt to step in. And I feel like that doubt has been quite muted. And so there's a big part of me that really wants to help others that are struggling with that kind of dialogue, that idea of like, oh, well, I had this experience in my life, and what right does that give me to help others when, I've had my own failures and my own troubles and my own challenges? What right do I have to help others? And that can show up in all sorts of ways. And in working with addicts at the treatment center I work at, I see that in a very amplified way, because most addicts have done things in the path of securing their drug of choice that normally they wouldn't do if all things were equal. They wouldn't be taking certain actions. They wouldn't be doing certain things. They wouldn't be breaking the law. And yet, their nature is not that. And yet they're doing those things in order to continue on the path of using and get their drug of choice. And really helping those people to realize that even though those things happened, that at their core, they are, beings that are kind, generous, and not those experiences that they've had. And it takes time to really break through those beliefs and those thoughts of conditioning. But when we do, that's when we show up authentically. That's when we show up from our heart. And that's when we can really make a difference. And, I really believe that it's important for anyone who is wanting to share their message with the world to get to that place of peace around their history, what they may have been told, what their inner critic might be saying about um, their ability to do what they do. And once that work is done, then there's a real freedom that comes from that, and a real freedom of sharing your voice and sharing your truth and sharing your gifts. So this idea of imposter syndrome it's a bit of an illusion, and yet it's an illusion that is created from real life experiences. And my hope is that many others can come to this place of realizing that illusion can be broken through, and that we can step into this authentic place of being and actually do the work that we're meant here to do. So I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully that inspires you with some thoughts. perhaps I spoke to you in some way that is helpful, and happy to be able to share on this idea of the imposter syndrome. Bye for now.